Hey y'all, you're listening to
Two Wives and a Spark.
As an interracial couple, we've learned a lot over the years, and we're committed to sparking conversations that build community and explore how race influences everything. Literally everything. So that's our focus for this podcast.
Because we believe that intentional conversations are vehicles for change. We've seen the power of them in our relationship over the years, and we know that when we really listen to each other and to ourselves, we see the truth in new and revealing ways.
I'm Leah.
And I'm Rachel.
You're listening to Two Wives and a Spark. Welcome to episode 8. As we said in last week's episode, this will be the final episode of the season, and we're going to do things a little differently. We're going to answer a number of questions to share reflections from what this podcasting experience has been like, and specifically the topic we've been working on. We are going to keep some things the same. We're going to definitely open up with a quote. The quote this week with the wonderful voice of Malcolm X. And I think this quote does a great job of summarizing this season. And the quote says, "We need more light about each other. Light creates understanding. Understanding creates love. Love creates patience. And patience creates unity." Oh, yeah, we do need more light about each other. That is a fact. I think the more light we have, it truly can only come with more understanding. The more light we give, the more understanding we have. We thought it would only be right to close out the season with that quote and to then dig into some understanding. One of the best ways to get understanding is by asking questions, being curious, and then listening for the answers. There's a quote all my friends and I live by, which is, there are years of questions and years of answers. And sometimes you're in a year of questions. And in this episode, we're going to be in an episode of questions, and y'all get a gift because we're also going to be in an episode of answers. All right, my love, you ready?
And a lot of these questions have sparked from conversations with many of you all. Connections, questions, reactions. So we really came up with these closing questions as a way that we think it bookends this work. It brings in some of you all's voices, but it's also very grounded in a lot of what we've been up to this season. So we're excited.
Let's do it.
So the first one is about just reflections and lessons learned from this process. We started this journey 4 months ago in March. How has it been for you? What have you learned about yourself? What has the process been like for you?
I don't think I've shared this with this audience, but I used to be a spoken word performer. So stages have always felt like a home for me, for my spirit, for my energy, for my mind, for my heart. I think it's different. It's been beautiful to have a partner in this because at least I have someone who laughs at my jokes in the booth. Because I feed off of the energy that comes to me. So it actually, I think, shockingly has created a new sense of a joyful place because of the responses. It has been really nice to hear from old friends, to hear from my colleagues, to get questions and, folks sharing just their thoughts and insights and what our topics are bringing up for them. So for me, it's been joyful, and it's also shone a light for me on I need to, as I get older, and I say need to because it is something that I know will make me a better human. I need to work on the details, getting myself ready, writing things out, getting clear with my own why and the details, I think will help me make a bigger impact for myself and then in the world. It's shined a bright light on that part of my skill growing. It has fulfilled a place in my heart that I was missing. That's what it's been like for me, and it's been a joy to hear from people. What about you?
We couldn't be more different. I'm more of an introvert. I am not a performer. That's your gift. You have a real talent there. And for me, it's been a little more vulnerable. I think sharing this work with a larger audience. I do this work. I'm very comfortable facilitating conversations and holding space for these conversations in my circles. So with my clients, with my connections, but with this, it's been a cool learning journey of letting go. And I think, as our friend T says, vulnerageousness,
Mhm.
being courageous and vulnerable because I mean, we knew that this was important and it's something we've wanted to do for a while. And so while it's been a little bit more vulnerable for me as an introvert, I think it's been really special. And I think the thing that's motivated me and fueled me is the connections from people. Hearing from our amazing listeners has really been inspiring because it helps me to see, all right, this learning in public and this kind of processing out loud
Mhm.
is a vehicle for sparking these connections. And our mission with this, I feel, is moving closer toward accomplishing it because our goal is to invite more folks to spark these conversations with us.
Mhm.
And I think we're doing that. So for that, I feel really proud. It has been vulnerable at times. There have been moments where it's pushing me to stretch past my comfort zone.
We've been vulnerageous as a couple too,
Hmm.
because we're putting our relationship past stories out there, things that we haven't just spent time just talking about them until we start thinking about this podcast. How does spark and being intentional show up in our relationship?
It's a great question. I mean, it is called Two Wives and a Spark. This idea of this spark, this intangible light, and this intangible transformative power, I think that that has been evident since the beginning. And I think that this podcast has really illuminated that for me. It's allowed us to go back in time and to really think about how has this little light of progress and intentionality, how has it shown up in all the different seasons of our relationship? I think in real time, being intentional is at the core of our relationship. And
Right.
so I think this has really taught me about the power of that when we really harness our ability to be intentional with each other and how we show up and in how we communicate and how we share our love and our relationship with others. It's taught me a lot, and it continues to show up in all different ways, and I feel really thankful for that.
I think it's actually allowed us to be a stronger unit. I think it has allowed us to both share a space. This has felt different to me. There's been our own individual personalities take up space, and we've figured out how to create almost a third party. I think it's helped us get deeper just because we've been reflecting. I actually think the past coming back up with some hindsight and some distance from it has allowed us to learn things about each other that we could have just assumed we already knew.
It's
But then
true.
we're hearing each other say things from past experiences and being like, oh, I actually never knew you thought about it that way. So it's
Right.
actually felt like we're dating. That has allowed me to think a lot about when we start a family, how intentional we'll be with certain conversations with children. And it's brought me a lot of joy to have that image in my
Hmm.
mind.
Yeah, I think something that's been an important takeaway from our time and in this spark, in this moment, kind of creating this third entity that we're sharing with you all, has been the power of boundaries too. We're really protective of, okay, our Saturday time, and every once in a while things get moved, but we don't let this take over our
Right.
entire life. Our relationship is still such a sacred space. And I think it's been cool to practice that, working on a project with the person you love and not really loving and respecting each other so much to know that, okay, we're going to need these protected spaces and we're going to need
Yeah.
to set some
Yeah.
kind of containers. And yeah, I've learned a lot about that.
Yeah. And I think
Mhm.
we've done a good job of celebrating when we
Mhm.
finish. I am more of a rewards based,
That's true.
incentive human. So we've always had a celebratory
Date night
meal
or
or
meal.
date, yeah, or like dessert or sweet treat or whatever after. It's been cute to enjoy those moments together too
Yeah.
from this project.
Well, the next question is, what's your learning edge these days, and what practices keep you going and grounded in this work?
Mhm. A big practice, which I think then leads into my learning edge, is taking care of the internal self. Little Leah is still in there being taken care of, doing the things that bring my natural spirit joy,
Mm,
while also managing and supporting and being a leader during one of the most tragic times I think in our history as grown up, but not letting my light dim.
mm,
I think that's my learning edge, just figuring out how to always have to balance a lot when things are hard and not letting my light dim.
mm,
And the ways in which I do that is I'm always reflecting, I'm always observing, and then I'm acting. I keep that practice. I observe what I see, When I
Mhm.
see the spirits of the people around me down
Mhm.
and mine isn't there, I take that as an invitation to do something different to bring us back up with the hope that then when someone sees mine is down, they'll
Mhm.
take that invitation. So I definitely think that's a learning edge with my practices for sure. How about you?
I think the practices for me, they're not dissimilar to yours, and yet they are. Just the awareness, action, and accountability, that framework really grounds me in my
Hmm.
practices. What awareness work am I doing? How am I practicing more awareness of self? What are my self-reflection practices? And then how am I constantly being aware of new content, always learning new
Hmm.
resources and
Hmm.
research? And then there's the action work. How am I showing up with intentionality? How am I communicating and engaging and giving and receiving feedback consistently, showing up in solidarity? All that stuff is action work for me, and there are practices underneath those. It helps me to have these three categories because I can remember every day there's some awareness, action, and accountability. And the accountability is so key because it's connected to that feedback, constantly getting feedback from my support systems. But also for me as a white woman, my accountability comes to decentering whiteness
Hmm.
and working to understand and unpack how white supremacy culture has insidiously crept into some of my own practices. So, that accountability work of really holding the mirror up and really being rigorous with myself around my whiteness and unpacking how it's showing up. I think those are my practices. And my learning edge, I think, is really connected to last episode. It's really being okay with the shift,
Hmm.
being okay when the winds of change blow and accepting some non closure, accepting that sometimes there is resistance and you could spend hours on this plan that you think is perfect. And then in
Hmm.
reality, it doesn't pan out the way you hope, accepting that there is some magic in that space.
What's your stretch zone these days? And what's pushing you out of your comfort zone? Stretch zone, comfort zone.
Just practicing the discernment, I think, is my stretch zone, having the discernment to know when I'm truly deregulated
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
in a moment of being triggered. I would say mostly my work is connected to my learning edge when it comes to doing work with white folks and work around decentering whiteness and work giving and receiving feedback with white people specifically who are working on this work.
Yeah.
And sometimes that looks like holding up the mirror and calling out microaggressions. Sometimes that looks like, dang, something happened and I didn't say something. So I need
Mm.
to go back and circle back with that person because I was a bystander in an incident. For me, my work is with white folks right now. That's what's stretching me, honestly. But it's the work, it's my work to do. And I feel really strongly about that.
Yeah, that's powerful. I didn't know how I was going to answer this question, but I really think my stretch zone and comfort zone are similar. To be honest, I am in an education system that is predominantly white women in the specific school that I am at, a predominantly large group of white women. And so I think my stretch zone is, especially coming from Oakland, is really figuring out how to hold up the mirror constantly while also taking care of myself. In me holding up the mirror for you, I'm also teaching you how to hold it up for yourself and then how to also hold it up for me. Because
Mm,
you and I are each other. While we are raised in a society that says we're too different to be each other's support system or keepers or whatever, we have to be. I am in a position of power, but I'm also in a position of power as the only person of color in a position of power. So it is not actually okay for me to only hold the mirror up for you. And so I've been stretching myself this year to really give myself permission to let that be versus I got my friends for that. You give your all to your work, and your work is a huge part of who you are and your identity and what you love and what brings you joy. And
mhm,
so it is also your team's job to hold you up in the same ways you hold them up. And if you
mm,
really are teaching them to do that, they will do it without missing a beat.
mm.
And so I will say I'm out of my comfort zone because that is happening, learning to trust it. But I'm also stretching myself to keep doing that and that it's okay to trust people to do that because I'm also building that within them. And if I can't trust them to do it with me, then how am I going to trust them to do it with kids? Is what has gotten me in the stretch zone in the first place.
Mm.
That's been really powerful for me this year, and I look forward to holding it next year and getting better with it and being in deeper partnership and connection with the people I work with, keeping those conversations going.
We'll pause there.
Yeah.
We're entering our final descent this season. What closing intentions do you have for this summer?
I plan to fully step away from anything that is work related and pause and give my soul and energy a chance to rejuvenate and find peace and close out this year and reflect on all that I've been able to embrace and celebrate. What about you?
I just keep seeing the word spaciousness, like
Mm,
really creating space
mm,
for intentional reflection, intentional joy,
mm.
intentional celebration, and peace. And still doing the work, but I think there needs to be some new spaciousness. So I'm looking forward to having this pause and coming back really rejuvenated and re-energized and really clear about the focus for season 2, which is going to be great.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
Speaking of which, y'all, we would love to hear from you. Like,
Yes.
what would you like to hear more of in season 2? What kind of topics and questions do you want us to unpack and untangle?
We want to hear from you. We want you to share your thoughts and insights with us because that's just going to make season 2 even better. We can't wait. We hope that you set some intentions for yourself in this season and that you give some time to yourself to rejuvenate, re energize, celebrate, and keep doing the work.
Yeah, and we're going to put these same questions for you in the show notes so that you can have a chance to join us in these closing reflections for this season, and we will look forward to hearing from you and hearing what your answers are to these questions because we're truly curious. Really looking forward to staying connected. So
Yeah.
we'll be still on our social media pages and we'll look forward to connecting with you on our Instagram page. And you can hit us up at our email and check out our website because there's a contact page there.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll be around and we'll be excited to hear from you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Sending you lots and lots and lots of love and light.
Thanks for joining us today, y'all. We'd love to stay connected on Instagram and Facebook, so you can find us at Two Wives and a Spark, all spelled out.
If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend so we can keep the sparks of connection going. If you want access to our episodes as soon as they drop, click that subscribe button. Every rating and review helps others find us, so thank you in advance for letting us know what you think.
And special shout out to Journey Girl Magic Productions.
I'm Leah.
And I'm Rachel.
Thank you for listening to Two Wives and a Spark.